My name is Bill Ames. I'd like to welcome you to the Film Connection here at ECAT Studios on Oliver Street in Easton. Today we've got a very interesting guest for you. My co-host, of course, Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, who has produced many, many shows on ECAT. And so we're very happy to have her on the point here, as it were. So Priscilla, that's great.
Thank you, Bill.
We're interested in films, makers of films. We've had people from Hollywood calling in on the Zoom, but most of interesting is we're interested in people who live in Easton, or in this case today, Brockton, who are involved in the film business, and interesting to hear their stories. And we have a really interesting guest for you to hear and watch today, who has some interesting stories about our friend King Philip and beyond. So Brad Piche, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Priscilla, you may want to say a couple of words too.
Okay.
So why don't you?
That's 2 words.
Like calculus.
Well, I am delighted that Brad has agreed to be our guest today. He has an interesting history of working in the film business, and we'll hear about that. But we're going to lead with his great interest in the war, King Philip's War, which Bill and I have been interested in ever since we were kids, because it's a local part of our history, part of Eastern history. So take it away, Bill.
Right. So, Kevin, tell us about this novel you've written, or you are writing, pointing towards a script, and what's your strategy there, and what's the objective?
King Philip's War is a pretty complex subject, so in order to write a script, I had to write a novel to unpack all the information and the characters and the character arcs and all that stuff.
Yeah. So tell us about some of the characters in your novel, soon to be
They're based
script.
on real people.
Uh-huh.
There's some people in there in the war that were jailed for their beliefs. Mm-hmm. As you know, back then it was a theocracy, Massachusetts and Plymouth as a colony. And they believed in Puritan beliefs. I don't know how to elaborate, but it was very strict. And if you deviated from the norm, they would accost you. They would sabotage your job. They would lower your status.
How do you mean deviate? You mean not go to church, or?
Yeah, back then it was the Baptists. The Puritans, they didn't tolerate them, and so it was either my way or the highway back then. And one fellow, William Turner, was jailed because of his Baptist beliefs, and he spent 7 years, and he could have easily recanted and said, "Okay, I'm done. I'll do it your way." But he didn't. He stayed with his faith, and when the war broke out, they were having a terrible time getting people to fight the war, and so they made a deal with William. They said, "William, we'll forget about this if you lead an army against the natives." Which
would be King Philip.
King Philip and the Nipmunks. He made a confederacy, so it wasn't just King Philip. There was many other sachem that was, they were fighting. So William, he agreed because he believed in his country at that time, but he had a different faith. But they were willing to put that aside to combat these natives, and the rebellion, I guess that's what they called it back then. And he served with some of the people that he started a church with. So he automatically had soldiers that would fight behind him, that believed in him, that trusted him. And later in the war, he did die. He got killed. There's a place called Turner's Falls that's named after him.
And on Route 2.
Yeah, way out there.
Way out there, yeah, yeah.
So I use him because his character arc is phenomenal. It's amazing. So I get a lot of information from him, and there was some amazing books that were written about him, and I studied them, and I was able to construct a character that worked.
So does he have a love interest? Is there a girl, Pocahontas type or something like that, or what's your?
You know, automatically I thought about it, and I needed a female character, and a lot of it's sad to say, but the female characters back then were subdued by the men, and there wasn't a lot of. There was one hero that I'd like to mention was Mary Rawlinson. She was abducted, her children killed in front of her, and family slaughtered. And she stayed with the natives for a few months, maybe. And later, she was released later. They made a deal. And she had amazing courage. And so there is a character that I would use, but she just didn't fit in the rough and tumble story that I have to tell. It's a war tale. And women didn't fight on the English side. I don't know about the Native Americans. Maybe the women fought for
Ashwaubenon wasn't? Who was that?
Ashwaubenon.
Ashwaubenon.
Yeah.
She was what? Queen
She
of
was
the-
a squaw. Something I don't know how to denominate the feminine version of a chief.
Uh-huh.
A chiefess? I don't know.
Sure. Why not? Let's go with that.
No, there's a technical word. I'm mangling it right now. I don't know the word.
Yeah.
I wish I did. But so I couldn't really write a female character that stays with the whole story.
Yeah.
There are female characters in the story, but they're not the main character. They're not the main, you know.
So looking at the script, the third equation, right? So the first, you introduce the characters, right? Then you set up the conflict that determines what the last third, right? Which is how it's resolved. So
It's resolved.
what's the main conflict other than the war in general? Is it specific battles?
Well, the synopsis is this ragtag group of men are sent to dispatch a sachem. He's in a certain location. I'm not going to mention, but it's a local location around here.
May I interrupt 1 minute? Okay. Just feel free not to mention whatever you think might be compromised.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want you to be spilling the beans so somebody who's watching the show can just pick up those beans and run with them.
The book is written, you know, it's been handwritten. So there's a copy, you know. It's not published yet, but
Okay.
but it's a handwritten book, and it's a very specific story. There's a lot to it. I'm just skimming over
Okay.
the general details.
But you obviously are very pleased with the conflict that Bill mentioned and the resolution of it.
It does get resolved. It's a cliffhanger.
Good.
So is it set out in Turner's Falls?
No. The thing about it is my novel is kind of written in Hollywood style, where you have to take certain characters and smush them together. Certain places you have to, certain time, you know, you have to compact the times. You know, they do that with World War I, II movies, all sorts of stuff. But you have to, what's the word, consolidate some of the characters and some of the things that have happened. So I don't follow the war. If a historian was to watch or read my book, but I want to turn it into a movie, but if they were to read the book, they would see different parts of the war, but it would not unfold the way the historical narrative. You know, I have to take some creative liberty to make a story.
But you tell the story of King Philip's War along the way?
It's
like Moby Dick, where you learn all about whaling.
Yeah,
right?
you're going to learn
And then the story
all
is
about the
sort of
story, but, you know, this battle took place in the spring, this battle took place in the summer. Well, the whole book takes place in the summer, so I took the battle in the spring and put it at the summer. You know what I mean? You have to consolidate,
Yeah,
you know.
good.
I give it a good panorama of the war, but it's a character-driven story.
Yeah.
So, Brad, how did you get interested in the King Philip's War? Where did that come from?
As a kid, I went to Camp Almquist, and that is a place where Tispequin, the pond is named after him. So I took an interest in who he was, and the swamps were a really strange place. I guess that was their considered their temple. But if you ever go to a swamp, it's a scary, hideous, you know, am I going to get out of here alive type of feeling.
Yeah,
You know?
muck, a lot of deep muck.
Yeah, muck and snakes. And,
Yeah,
you know, the Hockomock Swamp is a very big,
huge.
it's enormous. You get lost there pretty quick if you don't know where you're going.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but that always interested me. The swamps, the Native Americans, the Native American words that we still keep around here.
yeah.
And, you know, the narrative of Thanksgiving, I happen to been born close to Thanksgiving, so every 6 years, my birthday falls on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So it kind of like born on Thanksgiving type of, you know, like, and,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Thanksgiving was just the beginning. And I always wondered, well, it goes from Thanksgiving to, you know, then the Revolutionary War, they were dressing up like Indians. Well, what happened to the Indians? You know, you always wondered, well, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, if I remember correctly in high school, I really, you know, it was a paragraph this big, I think, about King Philip's War. So it really,
Yeah.
it zoomed right by.
One of these things that the older you get more interested in it.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff when you're in high school. I mean, you know, it's
Is
not
it-
World War II and bang, 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 you know, stuff
They
like
zip
that.
right by stuff, you know?
Yeah,
The
but
Vietnam War, I didn't know nothing about it when I graduated, you know.
right, you
all
sort of
these
learn
things.
as you go in life.
Yeah, you have to. You have
Yeah.
to pick it up
Well,
and
let's
take your own personal interests.
Yes,
you
but
know?
let's face it, Brad has a good point. So much of our history, whether it's the Native Americans or the African Americans or the Asians or Hispanics, all of that history is really subjected to all the prejudice and, you know, racism and so forth, and it's not included in the history books. So that's changing. But when we were, Bill, you and I were in school, how much mention was made of the slavery and so forth?
No, right, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so Brad's got a point here, and Brockton High was no different from all frames
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell us, how did you get interested in the film business?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, I've always wanted to work in the business, but I didn't know how to penetrate, you know, the work scene. You know, how do I just show up and, hey, I want to make a film, you know? And so it just was a dream, you know? I kind of just thought about it, but then I bought a camera and I started taking footage, and so I started to really, you know, develop a hobby. You know, it was really fun.
What kind of camera was it?
Oh, it
Super
was
8?
a 3cc video, the small cassettes.
Oh, okay. Small
Yeah,
cassettes,
really small. Digital. DVC, I think it was.
Mhm.
Yeah. I got a DVC camera. And then I got software, and I worked for a community access in Brockton, learning how to, you know, do this right here. And,
A lot of people have come through this
yeah,
route.
you know,
So you tell me some of the various skills that you picked up in Brockton at the community
how to
access.
frame. You know, they taught us right away how to frame a shot. You know, I was learning how to switch back and forth when they were communicating. You know, the 3-fur, the 2-fur, the over the shot. You know, the stuff that they're doing right now. You know, that stuff, switching. So I learned that, but they didn't teach me how to digitally edit. And that's what I really wanted to do is so I had to buy a computer system, and I had to learn how to run software. And then I learned that, how to do green screen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I see a green screen over there, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I learned that skill, how to light a green screen. You don't want shadows.
Yeah, but you were, tell us about that, which you were, before we started the show, about your experience in making the Hallmark films. I mean, that must have been, you sort of went to school there a little bit.
I went to school for audio, and so I had a background in audio, and I play piano. And so I was artistic that way in the audio spectrum, but I wanted to be more artistic in the video spectrum. A friend of mine, a guy named Brandon Maxim, he's a director of photography, and he was working towards getting into the union, the 600. And so he's putting in his time in, and he got me on a set as a grip and electric. So I didn't know anything about grip, electric grip, none of it. I didn't know anything. And he threw me into the fire, and he was like, all right, we're making a movie. It's a horror. We got Tom Sizemore as the lead. Go.
Yeah. Okay. Like learning how to swim, right? They throw you in the water.
I learned by mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. So this all took place in Connecticut?
Yeah. The company was called Synthetic International, and they put up with me for a few days. You know, they were gracious. But I was learning, you know, from the other guys. They were showing me, and so I hobbled along and got through the show. And then he put me on another show, and another show, and another, and like a feature film, you know. And I was getting in the way a little bit, you know. I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned by doing. Mm-hmm. And then year after year, I was just working with him, and I became his assistant, because he had this magnificent kit. He'd have all these digital lights and cords and all these special tools for creating, for a DP. And my job was to keep it all together, organized, bring it onto the set, and then when the show wraps, bring it back to the warehouse. So that was my job. And so I worked as a G&E guy underneath him for most of the movies that he was doing for about a 7-year period. And that's how I learned.
So was this the Hallmark era?
The very tail end, he got involved in Christmas movies. And so we were doing Christmas movie after Christmas movie, and they were going to Hallmark and to Lifetime. And so we got the knack of doing Christmas, and you know, it's kind of like Groundhog Day. It's the same thing. It's going to be the same script pretty much. People are going to be saying the same things. The plots are going to be the same. The lighting's going to be the same. So it's pretty automated, you know. After a while, you kind of know what you're doing, you know. Mm-hmm. But you're celebrating Christmas 4 times a year.
Must have been a few jokes about that. You know?
Yeah. By the end of it, we were trying to make parodies of what we were doing, like making a movie about Christmas. You know,
Yeah.
Just to take the steam off, you know.
Yeah.
Celebrating Christmas a 4th time, you know. It's, yeah.
Yeah. So you run across some individuals in your early career who really inspired you to, like
Brandon,
we all do.
Yeah. The gentleman I was talking about, Brandon, helped me get involved in, kind of helped me demystify the filmmaking process.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's so important in life, don't you think, Priscilla, to have a mentor?
Absolutely.
You know, because a lot of people are helped early in their careers, so
Right.
they're anxious to pay it forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
To let the next generation come in. And,
Well, I think we all have had mentors. I mean, I know I did. I moved to a little town in the Hudson Valley after law school, and you know, I had internships and so forth. But it was the local judge who was my mentor. Without him, I probably wouldn't have known what I was doing half the time. So, yeah, it's a learning process.
yeah.
And but you have to have the will, the drive, the interest, and the confidence. And I'm sure that you had all of that, Brad.
Oh, at the beginning, it was, you know, you don't know anything, and you have this famous actor sitting there waiting, for you to do something, and you're like, oh, I gotta.
Yeah, Tom Sizemore, I recognize that name.
Yeah, he was in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
That was.
I think I know
think
who he is.
He was in that movie and a couple others.
Yeah, so he would command respect, right?
He's a rough and tumble guy, He didn't mess around.
Sounds like you're of the same ilk.
Well, I don't know.
Tish Tosh, right?
He's tough. He's a
Yeah.
tough dude. He's got that thick
I think
Brooklyn accent.
I think I remember exactly who he is.
Yeah.
I would.
Well, he always
recognize
plays tough roles, so
Yeah. Saving Private Ryan was a World War II movie, of course.
probably one of the better ones.
So
One of
Brad,
the better-
what do you, as you look back, what's probably the most inspiring job that you had, and where you felt that you really accomplished something?
Oh, well, we were doing a shark movie for Lifetime, and we had to, do underwater photography and stuff like that. And
Oh, wow.
we nailed the shots, and it was a really good feeling. The crew, put a lot of work into it, and so I felt pretty accomplished.
Did you have real sharks or were they like Jaws?
No, this is all digital now. We don't mess around with that mechanical stuff anymore.
Yeah. So you create this shark digitally.
Everybody's pretending that there's a big creature in the water, and then at the end, the guys in the editing room, drop it in and have a giggle. They
Fool them one more time, right?
it's
So did you enjoy editing, by the way?
yeah, that was a lot of fun because it's kind of funny. All the work is done, and now you're just sitting there fiddling with it, putting words in other people's mouths. It's all the trickery part. So it's
I see.
you can have a lot of fun.
Well, I did a lot of film editing way back when they had what they call Steenbeck machines. It was a manual. It was you know what I mean by Steenbeck machine? Moviola. It's
fill
a
me
big.
in.
Well, there's the top is the the film. Okay, that's starts here, goes through to here, right? Then the next track below is the soundtrack. In other words, all the voices here, and then you match it up, right?
Sure.
And then the third is like special effects,
Yeah.
like music,
Sure.
and some have four. Maybe you only use two, but it was like real tape, so I had to get the scissors out,
Razor,
and snap things, but it was a good way to start out because the software like Apple Pro and all that Apple system, it's mind-numbing, hard to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They change it up. You have to stay with it. You have to
Yeah.
learn new platforms as they go.
Repetition. You got to keep doing it.
It's a learning curve, at first,
Yeah.
It's tough.
But in the old days with the 16 millimeter, whatever, you had a strip of wood with nails in it, and you take a strip, cut a strip out, and you put it there, and then you say, well, my next clip, next scene, I'm going to put on the next nail, like that, and then you.
Wow, times have changed, Bill.
Yeah, but it had a certain it had a certain something about it, though. You knew it was too easy. It was too straightforward.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we digress.
No, audio. I was learning in school the cutting the tape with a razor.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah.
They still taught that when I was going.
Yeah.
So where did you learn all that?
The audio.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a school in Ohio.
Really?
Yeah, there's a school out there. They train people to be second engineers, which is the guy running the underneath the gopher type of guy that he waits around, and then once the first engineer burns out, he takes over. And,
Yeah.
kind of.
Entry level
Yeah, but
skills.
they're doing a lot of the work too. It was a pretty cool position, and I learned a lot. But like I said, it turned to digital as I was going there. They were teaching us analog, so I had to relearn everything with digital. So
And you're very comfortable with that now?
digital, yeah, that's second nature to me.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, we have something in Easton called the Hockomock Film Festival.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, we have,
Yeah.
it's under the guidance of Kim Pincus, who is boss here at ECAT, does a great job. But anyway, she is we contact all these different towns in the Hockomock Sports League. So I was involved with it at the beginning with some others, but the audio, getting back to audio, that was always the biggest variable, you know, because people, they could edit with their eyes, but they tended to think, oh, tish-tosh audio, you know, what does it really matter, you know, but it does really matter.
Sure.
A lot of these projects, I mean, these were just sort of teenagers or early, I mean, they were bright and all that, but they didn't really realize that in post-production, they had to be sure to get that audio exactly correct, because as we were judges watching some of these films, when the audio levels started fluctuating, didn't matter how good the plot was or how good the video portion was, you didn't want to listen anymore.
Yeah, you have to mix that.
Yeah, it had to be mixed perfectly.
Yeah.
And so the level of, that sort of alerted me to the level of sort of skill sets the audio requires. It seems logical on one hand, but when we saw this example with these,
So it's a very tricky process.
very, and of course it has a big upside. You can flow the music in and the little, you know, bird sounds, and
Sure.
all that sort of stuff. The
Audio is tricky.
audio is tricky, but there's tremendous upside to it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
terms of
It's the
creativity.
glue that kind of
Yeah,
keeps everything together.
yeah.
But
Because in horror movies, right, if it's too bad, you just turn off the volume, right? You can watch it. But as soon as you hear those creepy sounds,
they are creepy, yeah.
yeah, no matter how bad that monster looks, if there's no sound, it's not a problem.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
right.
Yeah,
No,
So
sound
w-
design is everything.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So as a sound engineer, I mean, you've been a sound engineer, you've been also an editor, you worked on the visual side. Which is the most challenging, do you think, for you
Oh,
personally?
The lighting is
Oh,
and the gripping. It's physical. You know, you're laying track down, you're hauling sandbags, you're hoisting, 50-pound lights up in the air, 30 feet.
Mhm.
It's hard. That broke me, I'm jumping out of trucks with 21-year-olds,
Yeah.
It's
So that,
it's hard.
as you were saying earlier, the key grip, that's the boss of the crew that lays the
Yeah.
tracks and puts the
Sure.
lights up for the
Yeah,
lighting
yeah.
people.
Yeah, those are pretty hardy individuals, They have a lot on their mind. They're in charge of safety. They have to make sure everything is safe. And a lot of things could go wrong on a film set. And the key grip is very responsible, They have to be just militant about the safety of the crew.
and very thorough.
Well-
They have to understand the tinsel weight of different things and, how to, it's a lot of science that they have to know, especially the electricians too. They need to know science as well.
Yeah.
They can't go plugging in something that will get over,
Right.
it's, there could be, electrical accidents and stuff
Well,
like
on the subject that we're talking about now, they had this film company came to town about a year ago, I think it was, and they were filming something for the American Movie Channel. I was astounded at the number of trucks that they had. I mean, it was, I've seen them in Boston, you see them all parked in a special place, but it's like an army. I mean, because so I guess they have to have everything there, right? Because time is money.
that. Yeah, time is money.
So they can't get on the phone and say, could you bring down something or whatever, but
It's all there.
it's all there.
And a
ready
couple
to-
of them too, in case something breaks, they have a replacement.
Yeah.
It's run like a military operation. It really is.
Yeah, they had a base camp, which is somewhere else, because they did shooting in New Bedford and whatever. It was for a 4-part series. And I think at Queesit House,
Right.
they rented Queesit House
Yeah,
for a week.
And they were filming in the gardens, the
In the
Queesit
gardens,
Gardens,
yeah.
yes. Because
Yeah.
I went there and I would shoot off So they came over
Shooter,
and said,
sure.
"You're not." Yes, I got up close because I was looking at the cameras, because the cameras reflected what was being filmed, and it was a 1920s, I think, style clothing that they had on and so forth. But I was very quickly removed.
Yeah. They don't like spectators.
No.
Because it's distracting to
Yeah.
They're called bogeys.
the bogeys.
Bogey.
Get rid of that
12
bogey.
o'clock.
Bogey at 12 o'clock. We've learned something interesting. So you hear the phrase bogey at 12 o'clock, and now it's time to leave.
But you know, Easton has had its share of filmmakers coming here. We had
Knives Out.
yeah, and then Shelter Island.
Yeah,
That was Coppola, right?
I think so. And then Cher was here for,
Right,
Mermaids.
Mermaid, but that's a long time ago.
that
Yeah.
was like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But-
But they used Borderland, and the summer house right by the lake,
Yeah,
Leech Pond. Yeah,
What movie was that for?
that was Shelter Island, I believe, wasn't
yeah.
it? Mm.
But this,
And then they used the Union Villa for.
that's right, for
And that was.
The Rock, he was there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and Donna Richmond's son, Nate, was an extra.
Really?
Yeah, I think he tried out, and he had, I think he got called, you know, he had a day job and everything. But I think he got called for 3 or 4 movies, you know, for sort of walk-on extra type things. So he made a good thing out of it. But getting back to the Queeset House production, so they have all these trucks here and all this publicity about movies, companies come to town. And so I asked them about a month, somebody about a month later, it was in the know. I said, whatever happened? I said, oh, they canceled it. So all that,
Really?
yeah, the whole thing never got finished. Because, you know, that crew is part of a big company. And they decided they needed some write-offs for some reason, so they just figured they'd cancel a project. Obviously, there had to be more to it than that, but it was interesting, very interesting. But yeah, I mean, to be a bogey, if you can last 10 or 20 minutes, you'd see some interesting
Yeah.
people running around, no question, no question. So what's the next step in your, so you finished the novel and you're in the script.
Yeah, I finished the novel, writing the script. The illustrations, I'm down to like the last 3. My artist is still working on it.
So tell us about illustration being.
The novel is going to be an illustrated novel.
Oh, okay, this is good.
The illustrations will help later in for the storyboarding.
Yeah,
You know, for the script.
yeah, yeah.
So you're an artist as well
I am.
as a creative filmmaker.
No, that's good. Like Blanche.
That's great.
Yeah.
I draw, but I have to hire an artist to really do a super good job.
You finish the script and then you pitch it to who? Who's your?
Oh, good question. You know, I really haven't considered that part yet. It's just been trying to get to the finish line, you know, has been occupying most of my time.
Yeah.
I have a couple of ideas of who might want to read it, but it's such a obscure part of history. It might not really interest people. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to find out, you know.
Well, you know, my brother financed a film on King Philip's War.
I saw that.
Did you?
Yeah, it's right over there.
By
I
Mr.
was
Peters.
reading that,
Somebody
yeah.
Peters was the Wampanoag guy. He was yeah. So you saw that? Yeah.
I'm going to watch it, you know.
Well, I'll tell him. He'll be very pleased.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't believe I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen everything.
Well, he did it about 20 years ago. He
Okay.
and Ted Russell and a couple of the others.
And then I put together a program on King Philip's War at the Old Colony History Museum in Taunton, which has a whole section on King Philip, and your brother David, and then Eric Schultz, who has written several books on King Philip, and Marion Wingfield, who has been a curator at different museums, and and then Ed Hands, our local historian, who has a real strong interest in King Philip. So the four of them were seated below this entire exhibit on King Philip and discussed the war. It was a very interesting and informative community forum show of mine.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what other area has in it the history of the most devastating conflict as a percent of the population involved? I mean, the statistics are impressive, and you know what I'm trying to say,
The scope of the war.
the scope of the
Yeah.
war that involving the local population. I mean, they lived in terror for years at Deerfield and all the west was it Bridgewater, burned the place to the ground. And that's when Cotton Mather came out and preached his famous sermon about how the Indians, can I call them Indians? Or
Yeah, Native Americans.
Native Americans, okay. So they surrounded Bridgewater, and of course it had a fence, and they got these torches, and they lobbed the torches to burn the town. But fortunately for the Bridgewater residents, who was, you know, a lot of people's ancestors here, it started raining. So the fire went out. So Cotton Mather, the famous Reverend Cotton Mather, came down from Cambridge, preached this sermon, and it's all about the story of Bridgewater and how God intervened to save Bridgewater because, of course, you know, God was on our side. You
Right.
know, the big battalions were. But anyway, it's a famous in its own little world speech by Cotton Mather because it's very dramatic. I mean, they just about burned the place to the ground, then it starts raining, fire's out. You know, so they didn't check the weather before they attacked. So I think that's the takeaway for the bad guys. But
Okay, well, it's been such a pleasure to hear your story.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I appreciate it. Very interesting talking to both of you. I didn't realize so many people are interested in the King Philip's War.
a lot. Oh,
Yeah.
tremendous
Yeah, it's,
number. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous
well,
interest.
I'm happy about that then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should be, because it's obviously an interesting story, and it involves our ancestors to
Yeah.
some degree,
Yeah.
people around here.
And the upside for those who don't know about it is that you'll have a fresh appeal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'll be so interesting. People say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know about that," or "How interesting." So it's a win-win, I think,
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's one of these things, the older you get in life, you start learning about these things, and they become interesting,
Yeah.
whereas earlier you got other things
Do
to
you
think
know
about.
if Reverend, help me out here, who wrote in 1886 the history of Easton?
Chafin.
Chafin, yeah. Do you know if he included the war?
Yeah, I'm sure he did,
I'm sure he did too. Have
in
to check
some
that out.
degree.
Mm.
Yeah, Bay Road.
Yep.
And King Philip, I don't think King Philip spent much time in Easton,
Mm.
but he probably traveled through a lot.
Right.
And I think at Stonehill, there's a retreat up behind the college near the Brockton line, where there's a lot of big rocks, and I think it was sort of a shelter,
Mm-hmm.
sort of for, if it was raining or something, they would stop there. It was known. So I think the trail went through there.
I see. Mm-hmm. Well, Brad, best of luck in the future,
Well, thank you so
and
much.
in
I
this
appreciate that.
and this wonderful story that you have written, this novel, and now you're writing the script, and so we hope to be the first to be at the premiere, aren't we, Bill?
Yeah, we definitely.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
When do you think it will be?
Oh, I'll probably be done by fall.
Yeah?
Mm.
Well, you'll have to come back and visit with us again.
I'd love to.
Yeah, and talk it through. And don't you think, Priscilla?
Absolutely.
We invite him back?
Absolutely.
I'll have a cover by then. I'll
Will
show
you?
the cover.
Good, yeah. Well, you're living the dream.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, oh, well,
That's great.
nothing's easy. Nothing's
Well, I'm
Thanks.
so happy that I bumped into him and learned about his extensive background.
All right. Well,
Brad
thanks again.
Piche, upcoming filmmaker and tech-savvy guy, and all the best to you, and good luck on that film, and we're going to be in the front row at the premiere. Bill and I.
Absolutely, and come back in the fall and get us up
All right,
to
I
date.
will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's it for Film Connection. I hope you've enjoyed this production as much as we have enjoyed presenting it to you. And be on the lookout for Brad Piche in the future and the film about King Philip's War. And for those of you who aren't familiar with King Philip's War, just Google it. You'll find it very interesting. And if you haven't seen Bill's brother David's video on King Philip's War, check it out on YouTube and get educated about a history that touches all of us here in Easton. Thank you for watching. Priscilla Almquist-Olsen and Bill Ames, all the best. Be well.